Okay. Hi, Mark.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. And this is Maryanne with the influential nonprofit podcast and courageous communication. I am here with Marc Pitman, my new friend that I met yesterday, but I feel like we go back for forever.
Yes.
Mark is a fundraising consultant, leadership coach, all those things. And your new book is called The Surprising
Gift of Doubt.
The Surprising Gift of Doubt, which I love. That's awesome. And so we're just going to talk all things about nonprofit and fundraising. So the first question I always ask people when I open this interview is, tell me something that you're proud of that you don't really get to brag about that often.
That I don't get to brag about that often. What came to mind immediately was I'm a first level Cicerone. I'm a home brewer, and I'm working on the sommelier of beer is Cicerone. So
gotcha.
I've got the first level, which is a beer server kind of level. I'm working on the one where I can tell what kind of hops are in the beer and what ABV should be on everything and how to clean all the equipment. And
okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I don't get to brag about that too much. I talk about my home brewing quite a bit, but I don't get to brag about that.
But about your certification and that.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't think I know people who are sommelier, like my brother-in-law is a sommelier, but I never know somebody who is, what is it called? A
Cicerone.
Yep. Which is the sommelier for beer.
Yes. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. It's fun.
So you can like smell and taste the beer and tell a little story about it.
Yeah. and some of us would say that it may be more complex than sommelier because there are so many different variations.
Okay.
Yeah. So
now it's on.
Hot take now. Yeah.
because when my brother-in-law would taste a wine, he'd just be like introducing you to a friend. Like that's how we talk like with this affection and describing a personality of almost like that. But I don't drink either, so I'll leave that with you. Okay, so that's thank you for sharing that. And so I have been doing, I've been working in nonprofit. Well, I would say like when I turned on my Mac Plus with the screen, about 6 inches in diameter. So a really long time. And you have too. So what do you feel like is, in your experience, some of the biggest shifts you've seen in the industry in that time?
Shifts. Well, one thing
I can say changes, shifts,
Yeah. When I started in the mid 90s, I had a t-shirt created that said fundraising is not the F word. Because I got my start in speaking, training nonprofits how to do sales and marketing without using sales and marketing language.
Okay.
Because that was seen as, we're not in sales, we're in development. We're not even in charity. We're in nonprofit work. I mean, words are important, and
words matter.
Sometimes build too much of an importance around words. And then we lose sight. So one of the things that happened within a large part of fundraising is donor love, which can be a good thing. Speaking to donors, communicating their language, communicating not in your own kind of lingo, dialect, but trying to actually communicate to someone else. So it's very smart. But some people took it the wrong way and actually started making their entire nonprofit be surrounded about the donor instead of their mission. Right. They should be serving someone, they should be doing some good, and donors should never dictate the mission. So that was a swing that we saw over the 20 years. And I think it's being right-sized by some attempts like community center fundraising and some other attempts at equity, and just to kind of recenter ourselves and give people the permission that are running nonprofits that, no, we're here for a mission, and not everybody's going to fit and want to fund that. And that's okay.
Right. So true story. Because my book, that's kind of what my book is about.
Oh my goodness.
My book and my company, Courageous Communication, is around, being strong in your mission and value to connect with like-minded people. Yeah. Right. Your job is not to change people's mind and make people care.
Right.
That, and what I call is like that we have our own philanthropic heart, and our heart is like born into us, like in the same way everything else in our personality is like shaped and from childhood experiences. And like that's just something that people have that you can't really change. So they either connect with it or they don't, and that's okay. And I think, yeah.
I think that's freeing too, when you realize that you don't have to, not everyone you see is a prospect. My friend Phil Jones talks about, said, how many customers could you have, or how many donors could you have at your nonprofit? And most people say all of them. We want them all. But if you were that little, I think it was a free clinic in the first year of the pandemic, which is scary that we can say that.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a clinic in a food pantry in maybe Oklahoma that got national news. And so they started getting so much flooded with donations. People were putting money at them. Somebody had started a Go Help Me, a Fund Me page or something. And now all of a sudden, what do you do when you have thousands of donors that are maybe one-off?
Right.
And you still have to receipt them. You still have to do all the right things by them. And then you have all of a sudden your mailing costs go up. And that's all not your mission. That's part of your mission because you have to fund your mission. But what you're trying to do is provide food for people that are having hard times.
Right.
So that we don't want them all. So we have to know how much can we handle, how many, and live within those limits. I think one of the hardest things I've seen leaders have to deal with is leaders tend to be so good at knowing what they're lacking, where they're falling short, as opposed to giving themselves permission of knowing that limits are part of being human. And boards need to do this too. Know that, that there are 24 hours in a day, and no nonprofit person should be using all of them for their work. There should be some sleep in there at least, and hopefully some other self-care too.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think I can see this shift, and hopefully, you and I are both a part of this, is like in the nonprofit culture, it's I need to sacrifice myself in order to save or help you, when actually it's the opposite, right? We want to be the models for what we create. Like I can't say, oh no, like I'm sacrificing myself or my staff so that we can be of value to others. It's like, when we take care of ourselves, like the Rumi quote is, you give from the overflow, not the depths of your well. Right. And so like giving from that energy rich place is so important, and can serve to be a model for the change that you want to create. But I think somewhere along the way, we got the idea like, oh, we can't be paid well or have, like only work regular hours, because that's just not, well, no, you can, that's totally cool.
And part of it is the way nonprofits are started. I think the founders of nonprofits are incredibly generous people. They're often doing it on their extra time. They're, usually have a day job to start. So they see a need. And it's so clear
they're helpers and healers.
That they want to fill it. And I think one of the problems that we're seeing in nonprofits, and I'm not entirely sure how to address it on the front end, but I know on the back end, people like you and I are trying to help them to learn, is that when you start a business, you tend to start with some sort of organizational thought inside. Profit, is the revenue going to be able to be sustainable? What are the hours? I mean, those of us who are business owners know that we're still, we gave up a 40-hour job week, 40-hour weeks for 80 or 120-hour weeks. So we still overwork too. But the nonprofit folks tend to not think about resourcing what they're doing. They just tend to see, they want to feed people, conserve land, save pets.
Right.
And they grab people around them. They attract people like that around them. And there's some point it grows big enough that there's total shock of, wait, we need to resource this, because why doesn't everybody see this? And so the whole fundraising thing catches them off guard. But in the foundation of that entire process is, well, I would say this, and please, if you're a founder, don't hear this judgmentally.
All you founders out there.
Well, there's dysfunction in that, because nobody else is going to be as committed to the nonprofit as the founder, usually. So learning to do things like HR principles and other things are just not what you got into it for. You didn't want to create an organization. You just wanted to save the pets, or
you just wanted to help, right?
Serve the land.
You wanted to relieve suffering, and not necessarily like, do accounting.
That's a great one. Yeah, exactly. So I think those make systemic issues within nonprofits that are not unique to humanity, but show more prevalent in the sector, and really confuse board members too.
Yes.
Board members are not used to that.
Right, for sure. And just so you know, my dog
Hi there.
is mad about something. Look at him, like he's just sitting.
Maybe he just likes the bow tie.
He's around the corner, like
focused.
giving me this death glare about something. I'm not sure what's happening back there. All right, so I have seen some of your research around nonprofit leadership and the types of nonprofit leaders. Okay, now I work with the system. When I coach and train people, I use this assessment called wealth dynamics, and there's a kind of they expanded into talent dynamics. So it's an assessment program, right? And system, but it's a different profiles around, the whole goal is to create flow. So, and balance. So it's like, when I'm in flow, that means I'm doing what I love, what I'm good at, the work comes easy. And these different profiles, like leadership profiles. And what I did was I was looking at your research, and I realized I could layer on what you did over kind of this system, because some of the profiles. So the four profiles, they're the charismatic leader, the servant leader, transactional leader, and transformational leader.
Nice.
And see, I told you.
That's what we studied.
Right. And so I saw that so one of the personality profiles is like a star, and a star is an intuitive person. They use their charisma. I'm a star. They use their charisma to drive people, right? They're very intuitive. They make it up as they go. The less prep, the better. And one of the things, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a charismatic leader, and so that person, that just the force of their personality, they kind of create magic and they just get stuff done. And so in the backside of that is, what you said, they can lead you off a cliff, right? Because they're so powerful, they just, everyone around them just relaxes, right? They'll get it done. Yeah. And I meet people like that. I'm like, charismatic. Then the other one is like the servant leadership, which is one of the person is a supporter, right? It's, you value relationships and building those relationships, and like you'll burn the bridge to save the relationship. Nice. Whereas a transactional leader might save the bridge and burn the relationship, right? Neither is right or wrong. It's just perspective. And then the other type of leader was the transformational leader, which is somebody who has a very strong vision, right? That can move people into their energy and with that vision. And what I found fascinating when I heard you do this, share this wisdom, was so many of those types, like you just mentioned, they didn't think they were good leaders. Like one of the biggest things was like, they didn't perceive themselves as good leaders. Yeah. And I'm thinking like, and I think it's, like a servant leader, like the person that leads from behind and leads with like, oh, well, that's probably not, because the leaders are like, and so, and is that like, I was just surprised to see that there was a lot of lack of confidence about their leadership style.
Yeah. One of the things that the research showed was a full 1 in 10 of the over 1,000 CEOs and executive directors, nonprofit CEOs and executive directors we surveyed, full 1 in 10 said they had zero confidence in their ability to lead.
Zero.
So that's if you're at a round of 10, which we didn't do in a pandemic, we understand that. But if you're at a table around of 10, at least one of those people on that table feel like they have zero. They're all executive directors, they're all leaders. And part of it is because there's not a lot of safe place to share doubt.
Yes.
As a leader, we have a bravado sort of John Wayne in the West anywhere in the United States of, the leader's got to be confident and leading from the front.
Right. Like I call it like armor, like you're prepared for battle. And very masculine.
Have all the answers. It's so toxically masculine. And to have all of the answers too. And so when we don't, part of the reason for that is the way we're raised, where we go through school and we go through early job positions where having the answers gets us the right glade or gets us the right acclamations or promotions. As a leader, it's no longer having the right answers. It's asking the right questions. And it's not glibly asking the right questions, but you have to be able to look ahead. I'm working with some, one of the things I love doing with executive directors and CEOs is working so that they're moving from the putting out the fires of right now to thinking about, wait a minute, the sector is shifting in a few years. How are we going to be relevant in a few years while the staff is still putting out the fires right now?
Right.
And so that takes a lot of confidence building. It takes a lot of the feeling like you're not cheating because you're not actually on the dance floor doing the dance, but you're out watching the dance.
Yes.
And those are all things that are not intuitive to most of us. Most of us just, the way we've gotten the approval and the praise beforehand is the way we want to keep getting it. And so that's why a lot of our leaders are called micromanagers, because we get in there, we know we can fix something and we know we could probably do it a little better. Like, that font may not be the right font. The font that our subordinate is choosing is probably not the right font for us.
Right.
But let it go.
Right. It's okay. Like,
so much of the stuff that we stress over is not mission critical.
It is not mission critical. No, but we think that's the job, right? You think that's the job, is to manage every detail. Good God, mine's they're just like having a fight or something.
I one dog is, because I was talking about pets.
And the thing is, like, pets. They're only doing this because I'm recording. Like, no one will bark or make a sound the rest of the day. I did a speaking engagement the other day, and literally the contractor like whipped up the table saw like right outside my window, and I'm like, what is my life? Like, I need a door. I'm getting one. I was about to do
a keynote for United Way leaders a couple months ago, and the energy company decided to cut my cable internet connection.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh,
so that was crisis management is different.
That's so fun. So I love what you said about like, there's no room for doubt, and there's no room to like share your I don't want to say insecurities, that's it, but just explore the vulnerability of leadership, right? And you can't go to, this is like one of my clients said to me this once, she said, Maryanne, like, you can't complain to your board, you can't complain to your staff, your spouse or partner's tired of hearing about it, and it's a really lonely job. So she's like, you need to hold like an executive director's anonymous or something, which is kind of what I do in a way. That's what I saw the need for, was there was really no space to explore, or, like the vulnerability, the insecurity, like, how do I grow in my leadership? How do I get to be that person because it's like, I hear what you're saying. Like, I'm the day to day, and I know I need to create more of a vision. Like, how do I get there? How do I become that person?
Yeah. And the person that you thought you were becoming isn't the person that, it's like the job changes when you get in the captain seat. That's what one of my mentors would say, is that the perspective changes in the captain's chair, because all of a sudden you see all the things. So when you were doing one part of the organizational work, payroll probably wasn't an issue. You just thought it happened, but as the CEO, and all of a sudden it becomes, how am I going to fund payroll every 2 weeks or every month or however it works. So I have found, I just had the privilege of, for our AFP chapter, creating an executive director coffee, where we no agenda, just social, only executive directors and CEOs. And for those of you listening that are with nonprofits, I tend to use the term CEO when I'm talking about executive directors, because too many board members don't know what an executive director is. They think it's an executive assistant, and so they keep piling on work. But they understand what a CEO is.
Yeah, I think CEO, like, that carries I think it's across
CEO.
Language matters, right? And so like, I'm a CEO, and that's their world. That's the language of most board members, like, who come from the corporate
I just
space.
try
That's
to default to what they will esteem and what they'll know. But so creating that safe space, and it could be just there was somebody in the same industry or a different industry, same community or different community, and being able to find that safe space. Often as an executive coach, that's what we create, is that safe space to just think. And some of us are verbal processors, some of us aren't, but to think and not have all the answers, because you're right. The nonprofit executive director is even more crunched in some ways than a for-profit, because they have to report to a board. They're not the boss. They have all of the decision-making responsibility, but none of the authority to do it. Yeah, because the board is supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
So, and so there's this weird relationship with the board. Their staff expects them to have answers, or to give them the freedom to do their own work. But no matter how well you serve your mission, you're not resourcing it. And this is where I have a fundamental issue with board members who say you need to be more business-like, because in business, when you do good customer service, they pay you. And so you have a good revenue stream, and it's much simpler. Here, if you do your stuff really well, you're going to go bankrupt if you're not focusing also on donors and learning how to communicate to them and engage them in a meaningful but appropriate way in the life of the nonprofit.
Yeah. Yeah, I always hate that. It always makes me bristle too, because like this is a really valid business model, like, oh, this would be like, one of the things I talk about is even the word nonprofit. We're defined by a negative, by what we're not. And in our world, in our country, especially, we value a business by the profit. And so we're already like a nonprofit. Like, who cares? It's a tax code. That's the least interesting thing that we do. Right. And so I would think, I call it human investment company. That's my stake.
Nice.
Like, I mean, I'm open. I always say, like, I'm open to suggestions, but like
right?
nonprofit, like, and I do believe that being defined by a negative puts you in like it messes with our collective self-esteem as an industry, because we're coming from a place of like what we aren't instead of what we are.
And it also confuses new well-meaning leaders. I've had a number of leaders over the years come up to me and say, Mark, I'm at this conference, like at the nonprofit storytelling conference. I had somebody come up and say, we've already raised all the money we need for this year. Isn't unethical? Because it's nonprofit, they think that means no cash.
No.
And so they think it's wrong to have money in the bank. And I just had another question this year. There's nothing wrong with having money in the bank at the end of the year, is there? And I said, no, it's actually 6-month year reserves is actually really smart. And most of the populations we serve have had enough disruption. They don't need us to be part of that. They need us to be stable and continue serving them. But because of the negative, I still go with nonprofit because that's what people understand. But you're right. It can be really misleading.
Right. It's the same thing. All we do is you take the revenue and you just put them back into the business instead of like, making a profit and taking it away from the business. You just reinvest it. Like, that's the only difference, and I do feel like the board structure is just pretty wacky. I mean, it is, you like, oh, here's a leader, but, and then the thing is, like, about boards is like, okay, you say, come help me lead. And they're like, okay, tell me how to help you lead. Well, like, no, you tell me how, like, right. And like, what I'm saying? It creates a difficult dynamic that can be really, I mean, just hard to navigate because, sometimes you need that authority, and then sometimes you don't want to flatten that hierarchy, and let's just all sit around the table, and be partners. And what I coach this group of nonprofits in Chicago. And one of the women, I was doing a one-on-one with her, and she was saying how the staff doesn't really talk at our board meetings, and we have like a problem, like they don't really engage with the board. And I'm like, and she said, well, the board sits around the table and the staff is like all lined up against the wall. And I'm like, okay, so first let's rethink the space. This was before COVID, of course. Let's rethink the space. And she was like, oh God, it never occurred to her,
literally having a seat at the table.
Maybe that's the first indicator that she says, I want their opinion. She was the board president. I want their opinion. I want them to tell me the truth. I want their feedback. I'm like, okay, so why don't you think you're getting it? And when we went in there, and I'm like, okay, so the first thing is that's a clear indicator that there's a shift, right? Because what you need to create are trusting, what we call, psychologically safe spaces where I'm allowed to speak the truth, and I'm allowed. Right. That's like about doubt and vulnerability. Like when you allow for that, it's so much more powerful, because then you actually know what you're dealing with, and the staff is trying to paint a certain picture for the board to get their validation, and to get significance, and then the board's like, no, but we really want to know what's going on. And it creates a difficult dynamic sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the interesting things with that too, that I had a teacher in college that told me that anything that's most personal is usually the most common. So when you walk into a reception and you are deeply inside, you just stressing out because you don't know if you have anybody that will walk up to you. You don't know if you know anybody, you're feeling isolated and alone. That can be turned into an indication of, wow, most people are probably feeling that too. And so I'm going to address that in the other person. I'm going to go up and introduce myself and include them. And, so, and then, and doing it, it keeps you from being isolated and alone. I think there are really well-meaning board members, and on most of our nonprofits.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I don't think this is the first step necessarily, but I think there is a short step to an executive director asking business owners or bosses or CEOs on their board, just saying, hey, where do you go when you don't have the answers? Or what was it like for you when you went from being a manager to running the organization? And getting the board members to hear their own stories, because when I've been doing my surprising gift of doubt trainings, I usually have companies and nonprofits together in the same room, CEOs from both, and managers and emerging leaders. It's really shocking to me how every single time there's this aha moment that is profound of, wait, you over there deal with these things too, or you in that sector, or you in this sector. It's a human thing. Doubt, miscommunication, misunderstanding, so that it would be really, it hasn't occurred to me before, but it would be really interesting to have, you ask a board member for advice and they'll give you money. If you ask them for money, they'll give you advice.
Right.
So if you ask them for advice, hey, what was just asking them their own personal story, you don't even have to share that you're having your own doubts necessarily. That could be a safe space. But I think one of the great things, the gift where I consider the gift of doubt is that part of the toxicity in organizations is that we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for the answers. We're looking to the board, we're looking to the benchmarks, we're looking for the averages, we're looking, what is the benchmark in our sector? Well, the benchmark is mediocrity. That's just the average, and we don't need to be mediocre. It is good to know what the benchmarks are. It is good to know what the research shows, but it doesn't mean that has to be, we have to kowtow to it. And so I think the gift of doubt is that it can finally push us to looking at the other things. Like, why is my intuition always telling me that we shouldn't be doing this? Or why do I always get stressed out in this situation? Or why does these plans never work for our organization or for me as a leader? A classic example is an introvert leader following an extrovert leader. Extrovert leader was gregarious and got energy and drew people to themselves. An introvert leader can be just as strong and effective a leader, but if they're trying to mimic the externals of the extrovert leader, they're going to kill themselves. They're going to drain themselves and get fried and burnt out. And so moving over into that space of, instead of why am I messing up so badly? Why am I lacking? Why am I so broken? Allowing doubt to shift the question to, what if I'm exactly the leader this organization needs? What if I'm exactly the leader this team needs? Or what if my organization is exactly the organization? This is the voice that the conversation the sector needs to have now. Yes. So start kind of asset, I guess it would be strengths-based or something, but it's being able to figure out using the personality assessments, using goal setting, using stories. What are the things that make us uniquely different? And are we willing to, is that good? Having that honest conversation of, these are the things we value. Is that good? So that, I think that's a huge gift that is probably, it usually starts as an internal journey for each individual.
Yes. And
developing the confidence for that.
It's so interesting because you and I just met yesterday, and I've been doing messaging and marketing work for nonprofits since many, many years. And you've been working in this field for many years. And we both shifted into this space where I found the most, what I found the most impactful was really helping people understand that it's about shifting the lens to themselves, right? Once my board does this, then I'll be better. Once I get raised this much money, then we'll be happier, then we'll be calmer, then we'll be this. Right. No, it's the other way. I instill the calm in me, and then that creates it outside of me, instead of, okay, when all these things happen, then we can slow down. No, you can choose to slow down at any time, right? And allowing for, one of the other things is just allowing for the rhythm of so fundraising feels like you got to go, get it. Because if you slow down, you're going to miss something. Yeah. And the what it is allowing for just the cycle, the inhale and the exhale, right? The inhale where, nice. Yes, we're making a big push, then the exhale is okay, let's refill the well, rebuild the energy, because I think a lot of people are giving from the depths of the well, and hustle is not sustainable. Grace and ease is sustainable. Ease is sustainable. Hustle is not, right? And so when we get out of the hustle and allow for, just realize that we're allowed to have it. It can be, there can be ease. We're allowed to have ease, and just allow for that. Even though we're nonprofits, we're allowed to have that. And so that's what I work with people on, is really understanding awesome. That it's about when I can turn the lens on me and then, take my power back. I think people give their power. So I tell them, enough of this, I take my power back, right? And from that place of not saying, I want to cast out doubt, right? That's not it. Right. It's
not focusing on the doubt.
Right. Yeah. It's the equanimity of, okay, sometimes I doubt, but that keeps, there's a place for doubt. It keeps you humble. It keeps you hungry, right? Keeps you like, and then there's a place for confidence. I can be all of those things. I don't have to, I'm not like one of these things, like you're not broken. You don't need to, nobody's broken. Nobody needs to be fixed, right? It's just an acceptance of maybe you are the perfect person at this perfect time. Maybe this is all happening for you, right? Like, and
maybe there are times where you don't know what you don't know. So much of what in nonprofit fundraising is a perfect example. Most of the things we logically think would be the right thing to do are wrong.
They're wrong.
Because we think we need to educate the donor. If they only knew enough about us, they'd give. No. If they're asked clearly, they'll give.
No.
And so, I mean,
if I could only tell them my story, I know they would give. Like, no.
If we get a billboard, that's the one I'm hearing boards go through again. We just need a billboard. We don't
just
need
a billboard, right? It's the magic bullet. It's like it's you know, like, okay, if I had this, then it would be okay. And yes. So
and my coach, I just recently started certifying coaches and the surprising gifted out. I call it Quadrant 3 methodology.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks ago, we did a class on which part of coaching. What I love about coaching is what Roland May called standing in between stimulus and response and choosing. So usually there's a stimulus and then we react. So it's like a hammer on the kneecap. The hammer hits the knee and the reflex goes.
Right.
And so we just get automatically moving almost mindlessly, maybe zombie-like through life of just responding to the stimuli that come at us. And so stopping to do that, a simple example would be an email that comes in your inbox. Stopping and choosing, I'm going to let that sit for an hour before I reply to it, can feel incredibly irresponsible, but it starts creating a wedge to see, wait, there's a stimulus and there's a response, but there is a space where I get to choose.
Yes.
At some level, there is a response. And my friend Tim Sarantino had come back from a vacation. And one of the things he learned this year was if immediacy isn't always efficient. Sometimes our immediate response to something leads to these long email threads or long text threads of miscommunication, as opposed to getting ourselves into a better headspace, or the other person getting into a better headspace and saying, wait, I just sent you this, but I need to clear up this. I didn't mean this, this, and this.
Because, in the brain, okay, when we react, we're reacting often from instinct. Right, from that lizard brain of fight or flight. I gotta, right, like, I gotta get back at you right now. And so like taking that pause allows us to access prefrontal cortex, like allows us to access rational thought. And one of the things that I work is, and I teach influence, which is when you were talking about, like, it's around deep listening and in connecting with people by having them feel seen and heard. And by having them feel seen and heard, not being pitched, not being sold, is they'll relax. And when they relax, then they're open to new ideas, right? They come out of that, because if you push, people go right here, right? They go into their instinct. And once you get into your instinct, your ability to think rationally is diminished. That's why, like, when you react and then 20 minutes later, you think of like that perfect little quip that you couldn't access because your brain is like, so I love that stimulus and response, because it does give you a chance to like access some deeper thinking. And, and it's like, but I should respond right away. Well, no, you're fine. Like, there's really no, like my old boss used to say, there's no marketing emergencies. Like, there's really nothing that's that much of an emergency, that's funny. And if not, then you pick up the phone. You know what I'm saying? Like an email, like that's designed that you can respond in a way that you can, have some thought about it. And I found that I used to do that a lot. Like I would see something and I would feel like I would have to respond right away. And then I'm like, oh no, wait, like just let it sit for a bit and then come back. Cause like especially if somebody's like not happy with you, well, you want to fix that right away, because it makes, then now you're uncomfortable. Like, oh, I can't have them be upset. I got to fix it. And like, okay, just like, let that discomfort and let that unease, but we tend to like want to react in the moment so that we can alleviate those icky feelings, right away.
Well, and alleviate the icky, or have that positive hit of, I just helped out. I put out a fire, which isn't the most effective, but
no, either way, right? It's you get that endorphin, that adrenaline hit of that. So what else do you do, like in the trainings that you work with people on? Like, give me another example of something that.
So, and what the Quadrant 3 framework. So we start out as confident leaders because we've seen other people lead and we try it. And when it doesn't work for us, we move down to Quadrant 2, which is the experimental stage where we just try to figure out what's wrong with us. And then most people lurch from space to space there. Some people actually break through to letting the doubt go to look at the internal inputs. How am I wired? So in that space, Quadrant 3 is I look at hardwiring. I look at 3 different levels of hardwiring. There's abilities hardwiring, like the Highlands ability battery. Have you heard of that? So it's like 19 kind of painstakingly weird tests under time pressure. And it shows you what you're naturally good at. You can't play the game of it. It's just how you perform.
You can't think, you just do.
And I love that. So it's like, what is your baseline hardwiring, and higher load isn't good or bad. It's just high or low.
Right.
Then there's the behavior one, like DISC or Myers-Briggs or something, where you can observe the behaviors. And then the other hardwiring that I love is motivational. And one of the frameworks that I found very helpful is the Enneagram. It's a 9 typology story-based thing. So looking at those, not to confine people or punish people, but to help build empathy and compassion with, oh my goodness, we're all different. Wow, people look at things differently. So if that staff member isn't understanding me, I'm not a victim to that staff member's incompetence. Maybe I have some agency to be able to shift the story or shift the narrative, or maybe my hardwiring is that I am a verbal processor. So I verbose all over them, but they need it written down. So maybe it would be a courtesy for me after, when I get back to my office, to just summarize in an email. Hey, thanks. It was great seeing you in your office.
Here's what
things. Yeah. So learning that there's different things that we can do. So hardwiring is the big area. Storytelling is another big area. The stories we tell ourselves become our computer programming.
We are. Yeah. I say this all the time. We are a collection of the stories we tell ourselves.
Okay, right? I say it's the human us. We have iOS for our phones, or Google Os. Human Os.
This is who we are. Like, if I can say, well, I'm not good with people, like whatever I believe about myself, that is what is true. And if you want to believe, then in order to shift your performance, you need to shift the stories you're telling. So some of the things that I tell people, oh, I'm not good with people. I'm like, well, sometimes. Yes. I'm not good with, because sometimes you really are, sometimes I'm not good at math, or I used to have I'm not good with money. That was a belief that I had about myself. Now I was well, sometimes actually I'm really good with money, but I get to be all of the things.
Yeah.
Right.
So I grew up in a family that I got homework for being in school, but also homework for being a pitman. And my homework for being a pitman was reading things like Think and Grow Rich, Dale Carnegie, listening to Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Florence Littell.
Wow.
So one of the things that I learned early on is that our subconscious is sort of like a Google. I call it Google now, our internal Google. They used to say a file clerk, but it's just,
which is how long you've been using that concept. So right.
So when you put a search term into Google, it comes back with the results. And sometimes the stories we tell ourselves, oh, I'm not good with people, it's just obediently keep bringing back the results. Yeah, you messed up here, you messed up here, you messed up here.
Right.
But if you say sometimes I'm not good with people, then you can start building that space in between stimulus and response to think, sometimes I am good with people. And then your search engine starts up, oh yeah, there was that one time that you were good with people, and it starts building up a catalog of stories that you can dip into. And same person. So for me, the classic example in fundraising, is I could lie to myself. The big lie that most of us tell ourselves when we pick up the phone is that we're probably bugging somebody. They don't want to hear from us. They don't want to be asked for money, all that. But that's just lying. We don't know that until the donor tells us. So why not lie to ourselves positively?
Right.
We might be getting them at the exact moment. They might have just won the lottery. This might be awesome for them. And I laugh at myself because I know how inane and stupid it is, but it's just as stupid as the negative.
It is. It is.
And it gets us in a much better place to broadcast positivity and confidence.
Scarcity and abundance. Well, what story do you want to tell yourself? There's enough money out there. There's no money out there. There's money everywhere. You just haven't connected to it.
Well, when the pandemic hit, so many of the nonprofits made the mistake of saying it's not appropriate to ask for money, when that became the only thing for so many donors that they could do that had concrete difference, concrete impact in a time of utter uncertainty. Their donation to the nonprofit, even every 3 weeks, some nonprofits were asking every 21 days and getting donors saying, thank you so much. They had gone from annual asks to more than monthly asks, and the donors are saying, I'm so glad we're making a difference. I don't know, everything else is out of control. Thank you for being a still point for me.
Thank you for being a way for me to put good and create some goodness and feeling like, I can have some power, in this crazy where we felt so powerless,
Yeah. And so, and another, but to an extreme of that is, I was doing a feasibility study with an organization who one of their top donors had been wiped out by Bernie Madoff scandal, his scam. And so they had been top philanthropists, and then all of a sudden the nonprofit stopped talking to them. But this one organization kept talking to them, not asking for the same amount of gifts, but kept the asking conversation going. And what they reported to me in the feasibility study was, Mark, because of that, this organization, we were at the most vulnerable we'd ever been. And all of a sudden, everybody left us. We felt totally isolated and alone. And this organization kept treating us like human beings.
Yep.
And they were okay to hear our no, and they were respectful. They weren't, cloying and trying to get us to give at the same level, but they respected us enough to ask if we still wanted to be engaged, if we still wanted to be donors, if we still wanted to be part of the programs. And they're the only ones that did that. And so we're really committed to this moving forward now that, we're not at the same place we were before, but whatever we can do to help, we will. And that was so counterintuitive because everybody else was thinking, well, it's just not time to ask right now.
That's not the right
time. We have to
right.
respect them.
That's right. So you made me think of, I did this, we could talk all day, but
I know we could.
Honestly, I feel like we're just, I did a workshop the other day on having difficult conversations. And one of the participants was talking about how, his employees were reluctant to come back to work because of pandemic issues. Anyway, it was the same thing. I said, no, I'm sure there's times in your past where you rose to the occasion, you stood in your power, and saying, okay, so make a list of all the times that you stood in your power despite conflict around you, like you were talking about, when you say, oh, I'm not good at this. Well, yeah, you are. It's like, okay, so if you're not good, make a list of the 50 times you were good with people, because your brain will say, okay, if I say find the green, you'll find the green. If I say look around the room and see that everything's green, you'll see the green. You're not seeing the red because your brain says to see the green. And so make a list. One of my coaches, he works with me on this, just make a list of, because there's facts and there's feelings, and he'll say, feelings are great, but then pull out the facts. When are the times that you were, because I used to believe I was impatient, that you were patient, and then because you're just not you're right, those things don't come up in your mental Google search.
Well, and that's your identity. I've seen that with the pandemic, where we're all of these things that had been instincts are now forcing us to make decisions like, do we go outside? Do we wear a mask? Do we have all the stuff? So I've had more people making less quality decisions lately, particularly without data. So, and it's particularly around fundraising, where they just feel like this is the worst fundraising I've ever done. And not all the results are it. Not all, they haven't, or they've changed the process. They haven't done all the touches they did with the last mailing. So the response is naturally going to be lower. It's not the same, but it's ignoring that data and looking at, and just, and centering on the feeling, which we're human beings. That's what we do.
That's what we do.
That's one of the privileges, I guess, of what you and I do, is being able to help them take a step back.
And it's not judgment.
Is all the data there?
Yeah.
It's totally information.
Yep. Yeah. Mark, this has been awesome. I typically I try to keep these to a half an hour, but this was too good. I know. No, it's okay. No, it's awesome. But here's the thing. It's going to be what it's going to be, Awesome. So I do finish though with a question. Okay. So, I love karaoke. I am a karaoke queen. This is part of who I am. It's complete integration and self-expression. And now the pandemic hurt a lot. Right. Yeah. So we're starting back again. I get to sing a little bit. And so, if we were ever out, at a NSA conference or something, we wound up at karaoke together, what would be your go-to song?
Well, it would be Twisted Sisters, We're Not Going to Take It. because
Okay.
there's a story there. The last time I ever did karaoke, I got to sing on stage with JJ French from Twisted Sister. I was at a conference that he was at.
Shut up.
And he came up. We're at a dive bar in Chicago. This is years ago. And we all did We're Not Going to Take It. And these poor locals were like, who are these social media nerds that are up there? But JJ French was one of them. And we did it. And so I figured that's
that in the bow tie. Is that you rocked out your rebel self?
I was probably in the bow tie at the time. Yeah. Because I was in costume. So yeah, that's true. So I decided I can hang my karaoke mic up on there. That I'm not going to top that. That's, you peaked.
Why go anywhere else from there? Yeah.
Well, and then I did the Don't Stop Believing is a bad one to karaoke with. I think it's that one because there's this long air guitar or guitar solo.
Yes.
And I did it on stage at a conference. And so I tried to do the Marty McFly sort of scooting across the stage on my back. It was awkward in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. We're not gonna take it.
Right. You have to think about those like musical breaks. Like, what am I supposed to do? You're kind of just standing there, you know?
I love this song. And all of a sudden you're singing it and you realize, no.
Don't Stop Believing that. That's not an easy song to sing, you know, like.
I haven't. Being in pitch has not been a problem for me. Like I just gave up a long time ago.
I got you.
I make a joyful noise.
No, not a thing, right? Yeah. Joyful noise. I went to karaoke the other night, and the DJ had it was his first time I'd been to this place, and the DJ had a sign, and it was you got fined. You had to pay if you wanted to sing like Kid Rock Picture, you had to pay $25. if you like American Pie, like I guess it was like all the songs that my old DJ would say skip, we would skip, but now everything's electronic. So right. But she would say, American Pie, that Paradise by the Dashboard, like, that one skips. Like when she had CDs, but now like everything's electronic. So like it would have all these like fines, like, okay, if you want to do this, it's going to cost you this much. And if you dropped the mic, it was $150. Yeah. Because I'm sure like, people think it's really funny. They drop the mic and like, it's a problem. Gosh.
That's a tech problem. Yeah.
It is a problem. All right. Well, Mark, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for hanging with me today. You too. Thank you for the work you're doing and for really creating a space for leaders to just be better leaders, because because good leaders create more good leaders, and we're all just here to like just raise the vibe of all of us. So thank you for that. And it's The Surprising Gift of Doubt. I can't wait. I'm going to dig in. You can get that on Amazon or anywhere fine books and audiobooks are sold. Yes. And where can people want to follow you or get in touch with you? How would they do that?
Twitter is great. Marc A. Pitman, MARCAP as in Peter ITMAN on Twitter. Concord Leadership Group is where all of the different things hold together, though. And if you want to get, if they want to get the report that you talked about with the 4 different types of leadership, that's at concordleadershipgroup.com/report.
Okay.
And they can
how the leadership
styles impact philanthropy in nonprofits. Yeah.
I love it. So is that the thing that I was talking to you?
Yes, it is. It's called the wake up call. Yep.
The wake up call. Awesome. Because I forgot what that was because I digested it so long ago, but it is like, so the thing that I talked about, the transactional and the transformational, it's very insightful. And I'm sure people get a lot of value out of that. Okay, Mark, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll see you next time on The Influential Nonprofit. This is Maryanne. If you want to learn more about how to grow your influence, you can go to theinfluentialnonprofit.com and download my Uplevel Your Influence Starter Kit. It's an ebook with a lot of the concepts that I was sharing today. And so that you can start to grow your influence and grow your income and impact.